Now, the African continent is home to a rising generation of young people who are driving global change in remarkable ways. These dynamic, innovative youth are challenging stereotypes and inspiring change in their communities and even beyond. These people are blazing trails in fields like technology, in business, social activism, and are leading the charge in shaping a better future for all. Now, whether they are campaigning for climate justice or advocating for educational reform or developing cutting-edge technologies to tackle social and economic challenges, African youth are proving that they are not just the leaders of tomorrow, but the trailblazers of today. But the question remains, how do these youths drive change, and what mechanisms can be deployed to encourage these youths to drive the change that we seek in today's world? Joining me today are two gentlemen. The first is Elvis Obas-Akpobi, the Executive Director, Not Too Young to Lead Initiative, Delta, and Richard Effa-kyei, Winneba, Ghana. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. All right, talking about the young people being the driving force of change, especially on a global scale, I'm going to start with Elvis. My first question will be, what do you think are the key issues that the African youths are tackling through their activism? We can see a wave of activism going round, in recent time, and it's not just on the political level. Yes, we will discuss the political level, but young people are in their own little way trying to drive change in recent time. What are those key issues that the young people are saying, you know what, we cannot deal with this anymore, we have to tackle it, we have to do something about it, and then they're rising up to the task? What would you say that is, Elvis?
I'm of the school of thought that everything rises and falls upon leadership. If we have the right people, the Western world today, you see a handful of young people migrating to the Western world, mostly Africans migrating to the Western world, not because they are better off than us, but because they have leaders who envision for the future, who make policies, sustainable policies that make those places habitable. So what we are tackling at the moment is Africa is plagued with helplessness, hopelessness, which is a negative ripple effect of bad leadership, selfish policies, and most importantly, at the moment we have a chunk of young people whose potentials are waiting to be harnessed because of failed policies. So that's why it seems as if the Western world, they are being developed on the potentials of young people who are not even that privileged to grow back in this space called Africa. But what our advocacy today is for better leadership, sustainable policies, sustainable and effective policies which will make our countries in Africa habitable. And most importantly, it's time we put young people on the driver's seat, mostly coming from the presidency down to the local government level across countries in Africa, because the African continent is overwhelmed with young people, and only young people mostly understand the pains of young people. And not just young people who are in sync with character, capacity, competence, and responsive and accountable. We have those young people in Africa.
Right. Thank you for that, Elvis. Now, Richard, my question to you would be, how are African youths utilizing technology and social media to drive change? We know that before now, even though there was technology, it wasn't used for these means. But now you see people, coming out with their mass voices. Not everyone even on the streets, but some protests, for example, start off on social media, and people are trying to drive change using social media. So how would you say that technology has played a part, and if it has at all, in driving change among the young people?
Okay, thank you for the question. I feel that when we talk about technology, it remains as neutral as it is. And then when the fuel of frustration rises, then the channel of technology is used. So we can talk about the NSAS movement in Nigeria. We can talk about here in Ghana, we had the Fix the Country demonstration and Occupy Jilobi House. And these were started off a platform called X, which was formerly Twitter, right? So we had what we call now the influencers. These are young people who have a lot of followers and whose opinions can shape the country. So once they tweet towards a particular direction, they get people moving towards that side. So that is how it can be used. I think, again, it continues to be a need that everyone who is connected on social media has to use that to drive positive social change, because the change that we wish to see has to be pushed by ourselves and not by an automated process. Yes. So far they've been pushing, and upcoming, there's even another protest that's been worked on and gathering a lot of frenzy. Currently, I can talk about the dissolve the NCA, which is being pushed by someone called the Chi Translator. This an influencer on Twitter who is championing the need for reducing data prices here in Ghana. And this is something that we could say he holds no political office, but he holds the mouthpiece of the people. And the people in power are stronger than the power. The power of the people, sorry, is stronger than the people in power. Thank you.
Right. Elvis, would you say that social media has become too readily available to the youth, and so there is a bit of would I say misuse or mismanagement? I'll give an example. Look at what happened in Kenya, for example. I mean, the Gen Zs came out en masse and said they were tired of the administration, especially because it came from the issue of taxation. And at the time, they were not in agreement with the tax that was about to be imposed, because already they were having it tough. And then they decided that they would not allow that to happen. And eventually the president conceded. But after that, it was as though they were not satisfied, and then they still use social media as a voice to say, you know what, we don't even want you to concede anymore to what we're asking. Now we want you to step down. And it was a whole lot of chaos. So we got a lot of people saying things like, there's a bit of Gen Zs doing too much because they have social media to mobilize as many people. Do you think that's the case?
No, that's not the case. Social media, our generation is blessed with the tool of our time, which is the ICT, basically social media. And sometimes I imagine if we don't have this awakening sense of humor with the social media. Let me take you back. Charity, they say begins at home. Let me take you back to Nigeria, where, if not ordinarily, a handful of young Nigerians have given up on the country. It seems as if when we fight for some things, it's not working, like what happened in Kenya. They stood firm and they got it right. They had a president that said, okay, I will sit towards your demand, find that demand for other. Like my colleague there talked about power belongs to the people. A handful of these people in Africa are young people. So every government in Africa knows that as in a generation of young people they need to negotiate with. For me, social media is not, we are not overusing social media, we're just using it to demand change. While I found out some issues where some young persons use it in other things, other negative things, but social media has really helped to checkmate most of those people with contracted governance or with our vote. We've seen cases back in Nigeria where a sitting deputy speaker said that a particular governor, whom the people in that state said is doing very well, the sitting deputy speaker said he will not go back just because of party interest. So it not seem as if he arrogantly said that. It not seem as if it's not about what works for Nigeria, what works for that state. It's about what works for his personal interest. And that's where the tool social media comes in, to drag people like that, to make them understand that in a democratic setting, and in a democratic setting, power belongs to the people. So on every platform, I've urged those in Abia State to tell the deputy speaker the meaning of democracy in the next election.
All right. Thank you, Elvis, for that as well. Richard, what challenges would you say African youth are facing when it comes to political activism? You know, we've heard time and time again that the youths believe that the older generation are not willing to step down so that they can at least, not even step down, but at least involve them in decision making. And then now they're trying to make their voices heard, but they still complain of certain challenges that are hindering that move. What are these challenges? What would you say they are?
Is that question to me?
Richard, yes.
Yes.
Would you like me to repeat myself?
Yes, could you repeat yourself?
Yes, so
My
I'm
network
basically
went
just
off.
asking, what are some of the challenges that African youths face when it comes to political
Okay.
activism?
Yeah, I would think that many times, in the traditional African setting, age is seen to be the index or the metric for wisdom. So the average African youth is seen but not heard. Therefore, there is that problem of gerontocracy where the African youth is not even given a seat at the table where decisions are taken. You are seen to be just a force that can be used to implement the decisions of the for want of a better word, the properly headed people. This is a major problem because many youth, I believe the youth can do it. I believe the youth are empowered and they only need amplification. So there needs to be these platforms, the opportunity to enter that door where decisions are taken. So that at the policy design stage, the youth have to be involved, which currently just a few are allowed in, except on partisan or nepotistic grounds. At the to also have the youth coming into play, right? So we can talk about and we can talk about the long-term planning stage, right? So all these stages are very necessary, and these are where the youth find problems because we have people, the very youths that are said to not be capable of running the country. These are the youths that go out and make it even in the developed world. We can talk about the US, we can talk about Europe. There are Africans who are there and that enables them to channel that systemic problem. The system does not give way for the youth to rise and achieve the potential. So we are not given the seats in terms of policy design. We are not given the seats in terms of implementation. And then there is intentional reduction in empowerment of the youth because it is known already that if the youth is empowered, he can do something. So we would make sure that people in this area are not, whether intentionally or unintentionally, are not empowered so they cannot, channel their abilities. So they become tools for political stooges. Yeah, that's what I feel is the problem.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Elvis, if you were to prefer a solution to some of these challenges and you were to address the youth, what ways would you say would be best for them to make their voices heard? Now, we understand that social media, yes, is a tool. Sometimes they resort to protest and all that, but we still hear a lot of complaints like our voices are not being heard, we feel we're being stifled. What would be the best approach for the youths when it comes to driving political change?
For me, I think we should have a unifying factor in the sense that oftentimes we've been divided along party lines, ethnic lines, religious line, and all that. But if you agree with me, the EndSARS protest, we didn't have that division, and the power brokers, I'll call them, they've mastered the act of using divide and rule. And let's not forget they've used poverty as a weapon to make the voices of young people voiceless. So for a handful of us that amplify the voices of young people, we'll be faced with backlash, unseen battles during our advocacy and our activism. But I really want to encourage every young African that the future of Africa is in our hands, and our actions and inactions will determine how Africa will look like. Our blunders today will become the burden of the next generation. We'll be complaining all the time. But I believe that if we have a unifying factor, if we have something that unifies us, it will have a focus that will put our national interest, the interest of Africa as a continent, first before our personal interest, before facts like this person is from my place, or this person is a Muslim or a Christian, and all that. If we do what is right, I think we'll get Africa working again.
Right. Okay, thank you so much for that, Elvis. Now, Richard, another challenge that the youths face is the, would I say, reluctance to even participate. It's one thing to say, oh, give the youth a voice, allow them to come out and represent themselves, because only they understand what they're going through and what they want. But at the end of the day, because of precedents, and I'm talking across board now, especially in the African continent, we've seen several times where the youth will come out and try to speak, like I said earlier, and it's like their voices are silenced. Because of that, many youths are not encouraged to participate in democratic processes or decision-making processes and movement. How can these youths be better encouraged and motivated to keep airing their voices, regardless of how they feel it will be treated?
That is a beautiful analogy, in the sense that I think someone made the quotes that evil thrives not because of the wickedness of the bad people, but because of the silence of the good ones. So it is important that we take our future into our hands, which means we should employ all the tools necessary legally to make our voices get heard. Thankfully, we have the key tool of social media and the key tool of a teeming population. So, of course, there are times where the youth come out and then their voices are stifled, or your parents or relatives will have to call you that, okay, soldiers are coming out, so come into the house. You know, don't go and get killed. Because we have cases, we had one which was Let My Vote Count protest, where rubber bullets were shot, someone got to the left eye just destroyed and damaged, and that is a damage for life. However, you need sometimes the initiative, you need the sacrifice of the few to protect the future of the many, because generations will come, and if the country is spoiled, for example, we have a case of Galamsey here in Ghana, which is the illegal mining along the riverine areas. So the mercury they use seeps into the rivers, and the people use it, and they give birth to children with defects and various other problems. If we do not talk about something like this, the next generations of people who will come are going to put the blame on us. The same way we are blaming the older generation that they sat down or they destroyed the country. We have that responsibility. It's not by a choice, but by faith that we have to make that move. Right, so at the same time, we do not want to die. That is a clear thing, nobody wants to die. However, if no one does it, who will do it? Because if we keep waiting, no one will come from another continent to come and save our continent or our country. We have to do it ourselves. So to do that, we need to get empowered, we need to get skilled in such a way that you cannot be ignored. If you are so great at what you do, they will have no choice but to open the door and to listen to you. So that's something that could help. The encouragement that let's all go there, let's all do the best we can, and whatever happens, if we go with one voice, that is really key. Because party lines, as my brother was talking about, the various lines that divide us, if those lines keep dividing us, we can never achieve our goal. Right, so if we are to come together, for example, in Ghana this year we have elections, and if we are to come together and decide, okay, what is going on, we don't really like it, we want something good for ourselves and for the next generation, no political leader can stop it. So it's that unifying factor and the focus. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Richard, for that. And I think that that's going to lead me to my next question. Now, Elvis, oftentimes we've heard people say things about the youth regarding their understanding, basic understanding of the Constitution. Now, we hear a lot of times that they're asking youths to come out and speak their opinions, make their voices heard. But people would argue that these youths do not have a basic understanding of what the Constitution says, not even across the continents now, even within their countries. They do not know their basic rights. They do not know the laws surrounding governance. They do not know what to expect. And how can you fight what you do not know? And then there are people saying that the youth are not even interested in knowing these things. They would rather spend their time on baseless distractions like social media, other than invest in knowing about their country enough to want to represent themselves in various cabinets. What do you say about that?
Okay, I'll go this way that you don't teach an old dog a new trick. Because there were times where in primary school we were taught civic education. I doubt if we still have that back in most of our primary schools today. And in other countries, you see right from that toddler age, you see at a very young age, you see the constitution, which is the DNA of any country, being domesticated. It becomes part and parcel of the citizens. But back in Nigeria, it's not like that. But the fact remains that there's a part of the constitution that everybody is in sync with, that government is meant to protect life and properties, provide an enabling environment where citizens can thrive. That alone is already in the constitution. That alone should be done. So when I see cases where people are elected into office and they start making excuses of the previous administration, we already know we had a problem during electioneering. You promised you were going to solve those problems. So don't take us back and saying you met a decayed system. No, fix it. If you know you couldn't fix it, you won't have put yourself up to be elected. So for me, it's not like young people are not in sync with the constitution. For me, I'm in sync with the constitution. But let's ask ourselves, is the constitution really, the issues of the constitution is really enacted? We've seen cases where, and I'll call the person an accidental leader, I won't mention his name, when he came out on a national TV and said, yes, we are the one rigging a particular election. We rigged it. It was recorded. That video is on the internet today. In a same climb, in a same country, that person should be behind bars. But it's for me, it's abnormality is a norm in Africa today, which we need. That caution needs to be deconstructed. So it's not like young people don't know the constitution. A handful of people know the constitution, but do we follow the processes of the constitution as a country or across Africa? I was forced to ask somebody the other day that what is Paul Kagame of Rwanda doing differently that other African countries are not doing? I'm looking forward to meeting that man, because it took from grave to go to progress to a tourist destination. That's where that man took Rwanda from. So I want to know, because you never can tell. The mantle of leadership can fall on me today, and I need to glean on the knowledge of people like that. Today, there is somehow, I always want to bring it back home. There's so much hunger, there's starvation, there is bleakness in Nigeria today. But to see cases where you get here on inspiring news of the leadership of a country prioritizing private jets over an enabling environment where citizens can thrive, it's not too good. In as much as I'll commend some of their policies, but I think I'll commend them on some of their policies, but I think they are treating optics and not the substance of the problems we are faced with today, which is not too good. That's why you see, if you go to every embassy today, you see a lot of Nigerians crowded there, wanting to escape the country because they've given up in their country. Why they have people who promised them during electioneering that they promised them hope, they promised them a better life, giving excuses for what they were elected for. Let's not forget too that we campaign for young people to be given the privilege to be on the table of decision making. And the president today, there was time I commended him because he appointed young ministers and all that. But let's ask ourselves, what was the criteria for appointing these young ministers? Because let's not forget too that up to date, Nigerians are yet to understand, to know what happened, the disciplinary committee that was set up for a particular minister that was involved in an alleged fraud, a young minister for that, which people always used to measure young people negatively that, but we gave this person that platform. She was not accountable. So if really power belongs to the people, if really we contracted governance to these people to help hold power for us, Nigerians should get to know what happened with that committee and why up till now we don't have a minister. I don't know if we have a minister there already. Why is there a vacuum there? Because there are other young people who are responsive, who are accountable, that can wear that shoe of that young person who failed us in our own space and not in the space of young people.
Right. Thank you so much, Elvis, for that. Now, one final question before we wrap up this segment. Richard, now, after all said and done, right, going forward, who bears the most responsibility? Because it's like a chicken and egg situation, right? Some say that the youth are interested in politics but do not have enough backing, support, and platform. Some say that the platform is there but the youth are not as motivated. So whose responsibility is it? Is it the government's responsibility to create initiatives that would further boost morale or motivation for the youth to participate? Or is it the youths that are supposed to take matters into their hands and say, you know what, if you're not giving us this platform, we are taking it because we're taking over and we have to make something meaningful for our generation? Whose responsibility?
Well, fundamentally, it should be an all-stakeholder affair. So, majorly on those who wield the authority, that is those in government, right? But there happens to be something like this. I happen to have been privileged to be an Erasmus Plus scholar. So last year I was in Denmark, and we could see the vast difference in terms of the system. So on the basis of education, security, planning, welfare, healthcare, every other part is totally different. The leaders we have had the privilege of probably studying there or staying there. So I feel there is that responsibility on the leaders, that is the mandated leaders. There is also the responsibility of the citizen, not to just be a spectator, but to be an active participant in the shaping of the society. So the government has to open the door for these conversations to be held. And then it's important for the youth or the stakeholder to understand that, okay, if the system is made right, be aware that you no longer enjoy from the bribery that you used to enjoy from, because it has become something that has formed our habits, has shaped our habits. We are used to polluting the environment. We are used to having our way because the system is spoiled. And then we turn around to blame the one in government. So there's a bigger responsibility on the one there to, on paper, have the policies done and implement those ones. There's also the responsibility on the citizen or on the youth to get together and change our lifestyle. I'll give an example. In 2020, I was teaching in Obas-Akpobi in Ashanti region. And when COVID came, myself and a number of youths in the society, so teachers, nurses, drivers and everybody, we came together, and that was even through social media. We were, we underwent training by the Ghana Health Service, and we went across 42 communities and its environs, telling them about the disease of COVID and how it is transmitted and how to prevent it and all of this. This was absolutely free of charge. This in collaboration with the traditional leaders and the political leaders. That year we had elections again. I'm part of a group, and we had the Obas-Akpobi for peaceful elections. We went around advocating the need for dialogue. Violence solves nothing. The dialogue is really key. It's important that we sit down to talk, right? Violence is such an extreme thing that if you look at what it has caused over the years, those who have had military rules have seen what it did, right? And we do not want that. However, there needs to be a point where we can sit down and talk. That is what the youth has to advocate for. And that is what the people in leadership have to open the door for. Because as Kwame Nkrumah said, the Ghanaian or the African is not timid. Only that when, frustrations and things build up, they erupt like a volcanic fury, and then it cannot be held again. So we have that mandate, we have to do that. But it's important that the government understands the power of the people, and the people understand the power of the government. It's a collaborative thing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Richard. That's a good place to end it. But I want to say a big thank you, gentlemen. Elvis Obas-Akpobi, Executive Director, Not Too Young to Lead Initiative. And of course, Richard Effa-kyei, Winneba, Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you very much.